Hello everybody and welcome back to Space Engineers, where today I am finally going to do a little bit of a build tutorial slash not really tutorial on this wheel loader that I've built in my nomadic series. I've had so many of you guys asking me how I built it and asking if I can show off how I built it. So here it is. This is me showing it off, and like all things on this channel, I don't like to so much do this kind of thing. I don't like to do this is a tutorial how you make this. For the pure fact, I think every solution has hundreds of different, or every problem has hundreds of solutions. And this is just my solution, which means you guys can create your own solutions. I just am the person to try and help you realize you can imagine a lot more than you think you can. I guess that's the simple way of putting it. So this is the one which I've taken directly from the actual series, so if there's any blocks or anything missing, that's why. I built it all in survival. But without further ado, I'm missing a light. Let's get started. Now, before I actually get too far into this build, I will say this build this has all been built on a PC version of Space Engineers. I don't own any kind of console version of the game, and so I don't know if this works or if it doesn't. So if you guys are on consoles, you're going to have to experiment, but I cannot guarantee that it doesn't work. Second thing, this wheel loader uses scripts. I believe it uses 5 scripts in total, and so if you're playing on some kind of server which doesn't allow scripts, you won't be able to do this. Or if you're on console and I don't think it also allows scripts, be more difficult. Sorry, it's just how it works. And other than that, it uses a couple of different subgrids which can cause different buggy things to happen sometimes. You just have to experiment, and I'll show you to the best of my knowledge of how I've made it so it's fairly stable. However, if you end up building this in your own world and it explodes, don't shout at me. Okay, so this is the main hull of the vehicle, or the main chassis, should I say. So we're using 5x5 wheels, and you can see I'm using the narrow ones. So this is the center line here, this red conveyor line, so this is the center. So we've got the blocks on either side there, and we need this conveyor line because this is in the future where the main boxes go, and it passes all the way to the front and to these arms where the actual front of the build is. As you can see, it runs all the way along here, and it runs into a hinge. I also have a second hinge, just to make it look stronger. You don't necessarily need to, however, one of them will need to be powered off. You only really want one hinge to be on. And I'll explain why it says #steer later on. So that goes there, and then it proceeds past the hinge, continuing on, which then it goes to an advanced rotor. This advanced rotor allows the actual excavator to have a bit more of a twist in it. I don't know if I'm actually strong enough to lift it up. No, I'm not. Basically, these wheels can lift up in that kind of axis. So that's where that is. From there it goes into another block and to another one, where it goes to a T-piece, which points upwards, and to these pieces there, which relay all of the boxes into, or all of the items into these blue small cargo boxes on either side, and then in turn into these conveyor tubes. Hope that makes sense. And you can see the suspension is next to the red conveyors and the blue cargo boxes. And again, it pushes into the middle. The other thing I have, or at least on mine, is change the strength depending on the weight. I normally keep it at about 5 to 10, depending on how I feel. But the height offset is on -40. So the highest you can get is -50. I have it on -40 just to give it that little bit of a slant down. I quite like that. So you guys want to copy it entirely, that's what I've got. And then I just have all of the friction and all of the power. You can adjust these depending on how much you have in this box. And then I set the speed limit so I don't, absolutely send it. Other things to mention, the actual steering is limited to minus 25 degrees and plus 25 degrees. I don't know why it's not on that one. I would recommend you set to both of them like that. So that is stage 1. If at any point in this video you need to pause the video if you're building and trying to copy along, you can feel free to. So the next stage, we're going to be looking at the cargo. So this is where the boxes go all at the back. So the first is the main box, and we are lining it so the 3 large ports of this box are sort of here, here, and on this face here. And then you have a small one here, on the underside is a small one, and on that side there's a small one. That way, everything goes through this box and through that conveyor line which we talked about just earlier. This then uses its large port into a regular box and we have a top connector which I've only just realised it actually can't connect to anything. Why is that a thing? This connector actually doesn't connect. Actually, you can probably connect it there. But then we have points on the side which go into this one, and the same on that side, just for redundancy. Now, I could have put this connector right up against this block. However, I wanted to stick it out a little bit more, which meant I technically could have pushed everything back. But this is how I decided to do it. The other thing I found a little bit confusing, and I would recommend you do slightly differently than how I've done it here, is this is a small conveyor sorter, and that is to chuck out stone. So all of these bottom, so the large connector and then the 6 small connectors, they all just dump stone. Now, I don't know why I haven't just put the sorter directly down into these 3. Why I've decided to snake it around like that beats me. But I guess that's what I did. And then the actual port connects into this bottom connector as well. And that's the most of that. The other thing to mention is I also have the batteries underneath where the seat is going to be. I found that's just the easiest place to put it, and they're fairly low down, which means it's less likely to tip. And it's quite central in terms of weight, so, you're not going to be doing a wheelie or anything exciting. Right, let's move on to the next part. Talking about doing wheelies. So, as I've removed all of the weight on the front, but kept all the weight on the back, you can see this thing is very carefully balanced. So this is doing a bit of a wheelie. Very fun. But over here, I'm showing off the seats and then the actual programs and scripts that I use to make this all work. Obviously, I'm going to show them all to you now, but in the description down below, I'm going to have a link to every single one of them that I've used, which sends you to the Steam Workshop page. So if you need any of them or you like any of them, that's where you're going to find it. Okay, so let's start with the first one. So the first script I'm using is the battery status script by Lightwolf. I love how it actually shows up here. And this allows me just to have an LCD which shows the it shows an icon of each of the batteries on this grid in turn 2, and just shows how charged they are without me having to look into the actual settings to see, it fully depletes soon, sort of thing. So that's a nice easy script. The next script that I use is the Cockpit, Piston, Rotor and Hinge controller. Now this is where I get all of my settings for the actual arm working. And the best way to show it is actually probably on the actual main one. So as you can see, if I push down on my mouse, it goes up. If I push up on my mouse, it goes down. If I go left on my mouse, it tilts up, and if I go right on my mouse, it tilts down, which means I just have all of this easy adjustability whilst also being able to steer. Very nice. So if I go to the edit page, you'll see here I'm using the mouse X and Y, and I've got all the names or groups you can do set up in there. So that's the only two that I need. So that's the piston and then it's the hinge. And then you down here you can set up, so we're looking at only this part here. You can set up a positive or minus in terms of the speed. So if I change that, it would mean I would have to move my mouse further or left in order to get this movement. And yeah, those are the numbers I use to make it how it is sort of here with my mouse sensitivity. You guys can change that as you wish. So the next script that I'm running is, I can't remember, oh yeah, the OS script, or the ExcavOS. Now that is what I use in order to work out what mining things I have in my inventory. So this is a script which, as it says OS, you can class it as an operating system, which runs on a middle screen which states when or how much stuff I have. So it'll give me a readout of how much material, how much stone, let's say, or if I'm mining iron, how much iron ore I have in all my cargo boxes. So very good, and it can also tell you in a little circle how full your boxes are, which just, it's a bit of peace of mind thing, just to sort of, know when to stop mining, so you're not wasting anything. So yep, that's the OS script. Nothing too fancy. I'll show you further on what you need to set up the LCDs, but we'll do that in a little bit later. The fourth script I'm using is the Hinge steering script by Blarg mode. Blarg modes. Blarg modes. Yes, we'll go with that. So I'm using the 1.4.0 version of this script. And this is where you just put the hashtag steer onto the hinge that you want, or you do the minus hashtag steer if it's going the wrong way. And all that does is means if you do left, or if you do A or D, it actually uses the hinge to be able to turn. And it only does it based off what the angle limitations you have on your hinge of choice. And then the final script that I'm using is one which I love to use. If you guys watch any of my suspension type videos, if you haven't watched one of those, I highly recommend it. The Whips wheel subgrid, or subgrid wheel control script. Yes. This is a script which allows you to power wheels based off of subgrids. So currently in this game, usually in vanilla, if I was in this seat, these two front wheels won't drive because they're behind subgrids. There's a subgrid there and obviously the rotor subgrid. So that seat would never allow these wheels to operate. However, this script basically sets overrides on these wheels and allows them to work. You don't have to set anything up. As long as you've got the programmable block on the same grid as what your seat is on, everything will work absolutely perfectly. Well, scripts take a long time. Right, let's move on to the next part. Now, this is where we are going to talk about the cockpit. Right here. So this is how I designed the cockpit. Quite simple, quite easy. The nice thing is you can access it from the ground. So you can actually access it entirely from the ground, but I like to jump and then get in. Like that. And then you just have to go onto the OS. You've got to recompile it. And as you can see, so the OS does that cargo capacity. So you can see it's at 0%, and as it fills up, it will fill up, or the number will increase, and that circle will also light up. And then the no ores bit, that will pop up with a list of all the different ores. And then in the center, you can see the battery status, and that is that battery script, and that's showing how charged my batteries are. So it's really nice. I'm using clear LCDs there, so if I wanted to, I could go into, you know, no HUD mode and just be like this, and it just looks, yeah, looks really good in my opinion. I quite like it. The next one we're going to look at is the LCD panels, this one and this one. So this one, you just have to type in square brackets, ExcavOS, and then surface 0, so that's just the name of the panel. By default, it's 0, equals, so the cargo ore is this one I've got right here. So this just gives me the list of all the things in the cargo containers. And then you've got the other one, which is the same thing, surface 0, and then you've got weight, and that's this one. So that tells you the capacity. Nice and easy. Moving on to the next bit, and that is the arm. Yes, possibly the most important part of an actual wheel loader is the arm. You know, that's kind of a point of a loader, it's got the front mechanism. So it's split up into, let's say, 3 subgrid categories. You've got the red section. So this is where it connects to the front pipes, as you can see here, and then goes into these 2 hinges, and then runs down to this blue section on either side, and then keeping them connected together, we've got this red section. This red section then is connected to another hinge and another hinge, which is then connected to the hull, and a piston is put in between. The best way I can explain for you to be able to do this is to have one of these powered off, one of these hinges powered off, one of them powered on, which means you can lock the angle you want it to be at. You build the hinge down here, you then put your piston down, and then you put a rotor, and then take off the rotor head, not the rotor, the hinge, and then take off the hinge head. You then place the hinge head directly below that half panel, and then you angle all of your rotors and extend the piston and everything to get it as close as this head, as close as that, and then you will just try and attach it. And when everything's attached, you will just toggle everything off. You don't want any of these hinges to be powered, because all of the work is done by this piston being able to extend and contract. That's how you get all the mechanism, or at least in my one. If you don't like any of this stuff, you can indeed do it simpler. Using the same script I'm using, instead of using a piston, you can just use a hinge, or group these 2 hinges. It will do the exact same thing, however, I like the realism of using an actual piston to push the arm up. The next part is right here, so it will be blue connection. So we're just using 2 hinges. So we're just using 2 hinges again, and we're locking the angle at 25 degrees. Make sure that when you place the actual hinge, you're putting these 2 little white bits pointing upwards, and then 25 degrees will be perfect. Again, I'm locking it on both sides, and I've added a couple of lights just to keep everything lit up whilst it runs. Now, the main reason of me having this bottom section was because at one point I was actually going to have another set of pistons which would control this arm. However, it got a little bit too clangy, and so I just use it to make sure everything stays nicely locked together. And then the final section is this green section. Now, this is basically where the attachments get connected to. And it took me a little bit of time to design it, but I'm actually quite pleased with it in the end. So in this case, we are just using, as you can see, one of these hinges is powered off, and one of them is on, and I don't have any kind of limits, but this is where the script uses, or this is what the script turns to, control this front part. So the conveyor line goes all the way through all of this place, all the way through here. And this is a armored conveyor. You can see here. So it comes in this way, and it goes out this way, and then immediately goes back this way, coming out onto these pipes, and then it goes out, in, and straight into this small connector. And then on this side, we also have 2 merge blocks. You'll see why I use all this in just a minute. But yeah, Then it's just a couple of blocks to make it look nice. And hey presto, we have the front arm section. And as you can see, it all works beautifully. Yeah, nice and easy.
Fuel critical.
Now, the next section is, you know what, I might as well copy... yeah, I'll put this here for now. Because I'll show off this whole mechanism in just a second. Now, this is the actual drilling setup that I'm using. So, it's just 3 drills. If I was to break these, you can see they're just connected with small, or just blocks. So, obviously, on either side of the drill, we've got these. So, they'll just run all the way across. And then in the middle, behind each one of these end drills, we have the conveyor connector. And then down here, so 2 blocks and 1 down, we have the 2 merge blocks. And then it's just a case of setting up all your armor as how you want it. You've got to make sure that you don't have any solid blocks on the front or on the same edge as this, because what they'll do is they'll connect to these blocks, and then when you turn off these merge blocks, everything will stay attached, and you don't want that. But yeah, you can do some cool designs, add some little parts, just you know, make it up how you want. And then if I put this, let's say, here. Okay, so if you, you know, angle your way all the way to where you want to be, it's actually quite easy. So what you want to do is on 5, I have the toggle for my merge blocks, so I can toggle them on and off. And then 4 is the switch lock for the actual the small connectors I've got. So what I can do is toggle them on the merge blocks, and then as I push onto it, make sure I get the angle right. As you can see, nicely connected. And then you just press number 4, which is switch locking, or yes, switch locking the actual things. And now we have an entire pass-through from the drills all the way to the cargo boxes. Nice and simple. And as you can see, it's got a good amount of weight to it. But yeah, easy enough to drop off afterwards. You just press number 4 to switch all up, number 5, and then reverse back. And hey presto, you're all good.
Fuel critical.
I really like this mechanism. It's very clean, very simple. And then it is a job of doing all of your little greebling things. So under here, I've set my wheel arches. So if I actually copy another one of these, and just put it here, and then break this, you'll see I just use a lot of the normal blocks you have, just to get, you know, a little bit of that angle. And then to make these wheel arches, what I'm actually doing is using just the panel blocks. So the panel base, and then we're using these upside down, so the main part of the block is pointing into the wheel. Unfortunately, we don't have a panel block, which is just this edge. So the best block I have is the half slope light armor block. And it doesn't matter too much. That's that. I use a bit of blast door blocks just to add some, I guess, difference, so it's not just one big solid lump of metal. I've got my GBTD, so that's the Great British Tea Drinkers. This is just my faction. And yeah, overall I've got my colour scheme, so I've got my orange and then grey as my accent colours, as you can see. And I can't so much tell you how to greeble your armour, because everyone does it differently. It's just a case of working it out yourself. That's the best sort of information I can give you. The only other thing I will talk about is on the actual front of this wheel loader. This was one of the more complicated bits to design. Your turning angle from where your front arm is, you just got to make sure that it doesn't whack your cockpit, right? So I spent quite a lot of time just to make sure that there's enough space here so when it turns, it doesn't have a problem. The other thing, if I break these down, the other important thing I actually did was if I go under the armor here, so if I break off all this armor, I have a light armor tip slope connecting to this top hinge, and then I have all of these are just half blocks. So this is where the actual rotor is, right here. And I'm doing that just so it doesn't rub on any of these blocks. You see, these will never collide, or at least not for the angle that these give. I don't actually remember what angle I also set for this. Okay, plus a negative 15. But yeah, unfortunately I can't post this onto the Steam Workshop. If I could have, I would have. But I'm having bugs where I'm unable to do it, so. This was the best that I can do to sort of show off how I built these things. Like I said right at the start in a little disclaimer, this isn't necessarily to copy. However, if you do, I'm not going to take any offense. Just if you ever show it in any kind of video, make sure you tag the actual person who designed it. But Space Engineers is one of my favorite games for being able to be free in terms of how you build things. So I hope this video has helped you out, and I hope this video gives you a little bit of inspiration to build more unique things than bricks. But as always, my name has been Quantum Chief, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!